Hello. Hi. So we are live here today from Gasol Foundation. We will be connecting with Dr. Goran from USC in just a few minutes. So welcome. Hi, welcome. Thank you for joining. Today we will be talking with the author of Sugar Proof, Professor Dr. Michael Goran from USC. We will be having a nice conversation around sugars and discussing more of the topics in the book that is super interesting. So we are waiting a few minutes here just for Dr. Goran to join us. Just to tell you a little bit more about our guest today, Dr. Goran is a professor at the USC School of Medicine, and he's also the program director for the Diabetes and Obesity Research Institute here in Los Angeles. And he focuses his research in the causes and consequences of childhood obesity, which if you follow us, you know that that's what we do. We are all about preventing childhood obesity. So we are so fortunate to have connected with him and to have this conversation with him. So let me see, I think he's trying to join in now. Just a moment. Okay, we are connecting with Dr. Goran. Hi, how are you?
Good. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us
Great.
today.
Sure.
Great. I'm so happy to be able to have this chat with you today about your book, Sugar Proof, which I've been reading and I'm in love with.
Oh,
I was,
great.
yes, I
This
have my,
one, you recognize that?
here's mine. I can match you. Here's my copy.
Oh, great. Yes. Well, and I'm glad you're enjoying it. Hope you're finding it useful. I'm sure that some of the messaging in there will be very helpful for your outreach and for the audiences that you talk to.
It is. I think it's useful for a lot of different audiences. I was just telling the people that are joining us, thank you for joining and telling them a little bit more about you. You're a professor at USC, you're a director of Research Institute, you do research on childhood obesity, and you're very well published and you've had received numerous awards as well. So we're very happy to have you here today. I want to get right into the book and what inspired you to write this book and to put this book together for us. It's a really, really great book thing that you've done.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I mean, the inspiration is just like you say. So I've been doing research in this area for over 30 years. Uh, and I wanted to find a way. We were finding so many useful findings that had that I thought would resonate with the public. And it usually takes a long time for research to reach the public, and I wanted to find a way to accelerate that and get the latest research out into the hands of the public and couple that with useful tools that would make a difference. And you know, as you know, and as I think most of your followers know, we're just inundated with sugar. Kids are just surrounded by sugar. So and there's a lot of information out there, but our approach was to kind of provide it all in one place, kind of a comprehensive, authoritative guide to part one being the science of what sugar is, where it comes from, how to find it and all its hidden sources, and how it affects the body.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot written on the dangers of sugar, but not specifically through the lens of a child or an infant. And it turns out, as we'll probably get into in this discussion, there's many ways in which kids are even more vulnerable to the effects of sugar than adults. And
Right.
many people don't realize that. So we wanted to kind of highlight that to the public. And then, but and a lot, we also wanted to provide useful, practical tools that families can implement in their everyday lives without having to give up sugar. We're not saying you need to give up sugar, but there's lots of ways that you can cut it back and get a lot of benefits from cutting it back. So part two is just all the practical tools.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third part is the sugar-proof kitchen. So recipes, meal plans, getting kids involved with the cooking and baking process.
Right, right.
So just to answer your question, we wanted to bring it all together into one comprehensive place, make it approachable and understandable and useful for a broad audience.
It's really, really well put together. And I love that you mentioned the science because we do focus a lot on scientific evidence here as well with all of our initiatives. And there is a lot of information about sugar, but you're completely right. It's really hard to get it to the public, and it's really hard to get it to the public in a way that's easily understood as well. And I think that you did a really good job in like translating all of that scientific talk into making it like real, easy to understand, and even adding the stories like from actual families into the book was really helpful too to really put it all together. Who would you say is the target audience for the book?
Yeah, and well, uh, the target audience is parents, families, caregivers, grandparents, teachers, pediatricians. But just to respond to your comment, that wasn't easy to do, by the way. Uh, Especially for me, I write. I write like a scientist. It's very dry, very technical, and so it didn't come easy. We had a lot of help, so I just should thank my co-author Emily Ventura, who's also a trained PhD, but is um, a really great writer. And then we had a great editor as well, who really helped us bring it to life. And I think that was a process that we went through multiple iterations. It wasn't easy to do, and we're really proud of the outcome. And I really hope it resonates with the public that we are targeting, as you were asking about. Um, Families everywhere, mothers and fathers, but there's a lot more people who are looking after kids, such as grandparents, relatives, other caregivers, and teachers. I think all could benefit as well. I think we probably all have relatives who've looked after our kids or our grandkids who might benefit from this knowledge, or teachers who give out candy as a reward, or school systems that are feeding kids. Those are all the type of people that we're targeting with this book.
Great. And I can tell you I've been benefiting too as an educator and as a parent as well. So,
Yeah, and
and
hopefully we're reaching all those people. We've already heard from people who are saying, "Oh, this is a great book. I'm going to give it as a gift to my teacher at school, or my kids' grandparents, so that they can read about it." So
right. And you decided to focus the book on children, right? And the effect of sugars on children. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
yeah, well, all the way through my career, I've been doing this research for 35 years, and it's always been pediatric focused. It's always been in children, and I think there's obviously very special considerations to make. So children aren't just small adults. Uh, their physiology is very different, obviously. They're growing, it's a dynamic process. And when it came to sugar and diet, it turned out that there are very unique aspects of that process that make kids very vulnerable to the effects of sugar. It's not just that there's sugar everywhere and we're eating too much. It's that, number one, kids actually have a built-in preference for sweetness. And this was designed to be a protective mechanism because it was supposed to optimize liking for breast milk and deter toxic foods or poisonous foods from the forest floor. That was why kids have this built-in preference. But of course now kids are crawling around in the grocery stores where 70% of foods have added sugars and 80% of kids' snacks have sugars. So this protective mechanism is backfiring in today's food environment. And then the second thing is, once sugar is in the kids' bodies, and they will like the sweeter version, and if offered the sweeter version, they will want to eat more of it. And the more they do that, the more that built-in mechanism becomes amplified. But
Right.
again, the other aspect is once sugar is inside the body, because their bodies are still growing and building and brains are still being built, that process of development can be derailed by sugar.
Right. That's really, really interesting. And it's taking me back to a part of the book where you were talking about taste preferences and how that's built up. And you were sharing about the we tend to like sweetness because of breast milk, but I think as children develop and even us as adults, we do have these special taste preferences. And you start to talk about like how can we change that to adjust, right? The sweetness level that we have in our taste preferences. And can you talk a little bit about that and how you suggest we do that?
Yeah, well, basically, it's just taking control of the situation. And in the same way that as the sweet taste preference can be amplified by kids consuming too much sugar, the reverse is also true. So you can dampen it too by taking sugar out. And in Sugar Proof, we developed several strategies to
Mhm.
help families do that because it sounds easy. Oh, you just need to eat less sugar. Oh, you just don't give your kids juice. Well, it's more than that. We know that knowledge and information is not enough to invoke change, especially for kids. So we have a lot of basic strategies and simple tips for families to do that. One of which, for example, would be a 7 day challenge for no added sugar. So, and we have step-by-step guides as to how to do that with children, including young children. And basically, the idea is to dampen that sweet taste preference back down to where it should be. And you can reset that preference, and you can reduce the craving for sugar. And the best way to do that is to go without sugar for 7 days. Uh, that may be a lot to handle for some people, and in our experience, it has been. So there's also a 28-day plan, which is a more gradual reduction in sugar as well. But either way, the goal is to see what happens when you take your kids off of sugar, and yourself as a parent as well. And what you'll find is the first couple of days are going to be tough. I'm not going to lie. It's going to be a challenge, but we have solutions for that. There may be headaches and temperaments and moods and all that, but after you get through that first couple of days, I think what you'll notice is a whole new, different perspective and a better appreciation for taste of real food without the sweetness. And that's what we're trying to get to. We're kind of all amped up on sweetness and sugar that we've kind of lost sight of what real food ought to taste like. And then we're trying to get back to that point so that we're not just eliminating sugar, but we're introducing real food, whole foods, less processed foods, more whole foods into the system.
Definitely our food system or the process of food has really, really evolved and not necessarily in the best way for our health. And one of the things that we see is there's less consumption of fruits and vegetables, which naturally have healthy sugars. And there's more consumption of these processed cereals and bars and all of these, items that have sugar and even items that you wouldn't think have sugar that have sugar in them, right? So all of this is really affecting how much sugar we are consuming. And so I think as a parent, we do need to, be vigilant, and we can learn so much from this book and like how to find these sugars in these items that are have these hidden sugars within them.
Yeah, so there's sugar comes with over 250 different names. The food industry has become very savvy and smart at disguising them under fancy or healthy sounding names. So we have to help parents and consumers identify those sugars and understand what they are and how they affect the growing body. And that's we have a whole chapter on that because that's not straightforward. I should always also say to the people who are joining, hello, and if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the comment box. We can either answer them live, or Emily Ventura, I think, is also tuning in and can respond to those comments too. So send us questions so we can respond to them as well.
Right. Yeah, can do that. Um, I want to change the topic a little bit, just because I want to acknowledge the current situation that we're in with COVID-19, the pandemic. And since we're talking about kids, I think we should acknowledge the fact that kids have been, going through a lot of changes during this time.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
have you seen some new data or um, about, how sugar intake has changed during this time, or kind of related to physical activity levels, which we know have been decreased because the community centers and the schools are closed?
Yeah, I haven't seen any specific data on sugar consumption patterns or that much on diet either, for that matter. Definitely there have been reports of uh, declines in physical activity in kids, and I think that's unfortunate and real. Um, we're looking at some of our data from our ongoing studies to try and get a handle on some of the dietary aspects. I think there's probably, we can look at it two ways. I think there's potentially some benefits in that probably, or most likely, people are eating out less and hopefully eating more at home. I think
Hmm.
there's opportunities here where we have potentially better control over what our kids are eating, perhaps, and that uh, as parents, we're in control of what's coming into the house. Um, but I know most people, including myself, are succumbing to quarantine diets, a lot of home baking, and cookies magically appearing on my desk in the middle of the day and stuff like that. So, and that's fine. I think we're all for home cooking and treats and that kind of stuff. But I think we need to kind of just figure out what is a healthy, moderate amount. And home baking's fine. I think this is a hallmark of growing up and a hallmark of being a kid. Um, but there's ways to do that with less sugar. So, for example, we think you can easily cut back to half of the amount of sugar that the recipe calls for, and still have a decent outcome. Now, again, you might not be able to pull that off overnight. You may have to gradually cut that back, and that goes hand in hand with the dampening of the sweet taste preference. So as you gradually reduce sugar, you'll notice that you can start to also cook or bake with less sugar. And somebody's asking here about monk fruit,
Yes,
uh, which I think we're seeing a lot of recipes appear online with monk fruit. We're not a big fan of these alternative sweeteners, even though monk fruit is a naturally occurring compound. It's still it is naturally occurring, but it's a purified compound from the monk fruit. We just have no idea what the long-term effects are going to be on children, and it's ultra sweet, and it doesn't help with dampening down the sweetness. And what's happening is research is showing that when these alternative sweeteners are used, the body is still craving more sweetness. So reducing sugar is also about reducing sweetness. And so our preference is to use regular sugar but less of it, or the recipes in Sugar Proof none of them use any added sugar whatsoever. They're all sweetened with whole foods, like whether that's a banana or dates or dried fruit in a recipe acting as sugar, or a fruit compote. So that's the approach that we use. And we prefer that because it introduces the whole food and the fiber and all the nutrients from the food and the natural sweetness. And that's not to say you can never bake or cook with actual sugar. If you are, just use less of it, and that would be our preference. Studies actually show that kids who are regularly consuming alternative sweeteners end up consuming more calories during the day. And that's because it's tricking the body
Mm.
into thinking that they're receiving calories, but they're not. And so it actually makes you crave calories.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, because I think there is some misconception that the sugar alternatives are healthier because they don't, because they don't have a real sugar content, but they do trigger this mechanism in your body where it makes you want sugar because it thinks that you have it, but you don't. And then you can go.
Exactly.
We had another question come up here. We were asked, what do you think about plant-based diets?
Yeah, I think that sugar proof to a certain extent. I mean, it's not a plant-based diet, but as we take sugar out, we're putting more fruits and vegetables in. Whether that's the whole fruits that are going in as the natural sweetness. So we definitely, if you look at the recipes we have in here, they're mostly all. It's not a plant-based diet by any means, but we're definitely trying to promote more fruits and vegetables, especially for kids. So it's definitely moving into that area. So I'm a big fan of that because kids aren't getting enough fruits and vegetables to begin with, and I think fruits and vegetables provide fiber, other nutrients as well. They help with the diversity of the growth of the gut microbiome, which is developing in children. And you need to kind of feed the gut microbiome with the fibers. And a lot of that's coming from fruits and vegetables. So I am a big fan of not necessarily a plant-based diet. It's not for everyone, but for kids and everybody eating more plants and vegetables. And what I say is that sugar proof is not a diet. Um, no matter which diet you're on, and whether that's a plant-based diet or a paleo diet or a ketogenic diet or an Atkins diet or vegetarian or carnivore, omnivore, whichever diet you're on, there's always room to cut back on sugar, except if you're a pure ketogenic where you're eating no carbs or no sugar. But and then for most people, whatever diet you're on, you'll benefit a lot from cutting back on sugar.
Yeah, and that's why my favorite part of the book was where you have the actual tools that you can use. Like you include actual tables on there where you can fill in to track your sugar intake. So you can find the strategy that's going to work best for you, depending on what your diet is, your lifestyle is, and what's going to work, what's going to be the gradual, reducing sugar for you and for your family.
Well,
How
yeah, I
how
mean,
did
we
you?
developed all the recipes and the plans were developed specifically with the dynamics of a family in mind.
Mhm.
I have two teenage girls. Emily has two young boys. So we know what it's like to try and feed a family. And
Yeah.
families, have their own tastes and preferences. And even within my own family, there's multiple different dietary preferences. And so the meal plans and the recipes are all very versatile. So if your family's vegan, you can still apply the principles and just tailor it towards vegan. Or if you're gluten free, you can also use all the recipes. So what always disappoints me about diet books is they give a plan and that's it. It's a one size fits all type of approach. And we wanted to have something that was more versatile, that could be adapted to whatever it is that's working in your family. And that's kind of one of the main philosophies that we had in mind when we built all the tools, was versatility and flexibility.
Great. And you definitely do have that variety of strategies here as well that families can take and different tools that they can use. So I think, it can benefit large families, small families, families with different diets, even within them. One of the things that I found really interesting too was how you tie in sugars to certain behaviors. I thought that was really interesting. And I don't know if you can share a little bit more about that, especially as it relates to like academic performance.
Yeah, so we spend a couple of chapters in the book talking about this and talking about the links between high sugar consumption in children and brain development. And although we know that the brain needs glucose, or sugar, to function, that's essential. We also know that research has shown that too much sugar can affect brain function and brain development, including reductions in academic performance on standardized tests, which is associated with high sugar consumption in children, including memory, short and long-term memory, can have long, and some of these effects can be permanent because as they're affecting the brain as it's being built, it can affect the way the brain becomes permanently wired. And so this can have lasting permanent effects on things like memory, and that's because of its effects on the hippocampus, for example, which is one particular part of the brain that's developing in childhood. So those are kind of the effects on the brain at the kind of academic cognitive level, but also we talk about how sugar can affect more immediate effects such as temperament and mood and behavior. In the short term, I think as parents, you're probably all familiar with the sugar highs and lows that come with the energy highs and lows that come with too much sugar after you've been to a birthday party or some other blowout event where there's lots of sugar going around. And so this can happen even at a micro level, for example, just from a sugary breakfast, which can cause rapid highs and lows in energy and therefore concentration and mood. And we talk about the sugar roller coaster, which can basically describe those rapid highs and falls and crashes in energy level. And that's because of the way that glucose is regulated in the blood. And if there's too much, it will rise, and then kids get hyper, and then the body tries to fix that, and then it comes down too quickly because kids are super efficient at getting that glucose out of their blood to use it for energy. And what happens is the glucose goes too low, it overcompensates, and then you become hypoglycemic, and that's when your kids are going to get hangry, which is the combination of hunger, I want more, and angry at the same time. And that's a very real mechanism that some science has tried to downplay. There's a lot of studies that have try to say that there's no effect of sugars on kids' energy level, highs and lows. You're a parent. Have you seen your kids go through energy highs and lows?
Yes, I have. And I think, any of us that have eaten sugar, we feel it ourselves too.
Yeah.
We still get those feelings, that 2 o'clock after lunch, you feel like you need to take a nap, like call it a food coma. But we also are over sugaring ourselves as well.
Yeah, and so that begins with diet and trying to make sure you stabilize your blood glucose levels as best as possible during the day, and that starts with breakfast. And no matter what you think about breakfast, some people might not think they need breakfast, but young kids do need breakfast. And for young kids, breakfast oftentimes can be very high in sugar. And so that's an important place to start, because starting the day off with bad regulation of blood sugar is just going to set you up for a day of disaster. So if you can get glucose levels under control at breakfast time, it's going to make a big difference during the day. And this is also important, talking of COVID, with kids being at home, you can, play a stronger hand in making sure that that's going to happen. And we have a lot of suggestions and ideas in the book as to how to do that. And it could be a very simple thing like, well, not serving juice with breakfast, serving fruit instead, or what you put on your pancakes, or what kind of breakfast cereal you offer your kid.
Yeah, as a parent, I'll tell you what my challenge has been during this distance learning has been the snacking
Yeah.
because you have breaks. So my daughter is 9 years old, and she is very well equipped to get herself to the kitchen and grab snacks. So that has been a challenge during this time to make sure that she's getting an adequate snack during school time.
Yep.
And we do have, healthy snacks at home, but also we have to think about portions, and it's just a lot. So now we have a system going for snacks, and she has an approved list of snacks. But that first week
Mm-hmm.
was challenging.
Yeah, I mean, our homes have become our complete sanctuary now, and I think we have control over that. So there's a lot of suggestions that we have about how to set up your kitchen to make it more accommodating for healthy snacks, and whether that's just keeping glass bottles of water in the fridge, so that if they're thirsty and they open the fridge, the first thing they see is a glass bottle of water, or keeping cut fruit or cut veggies in the fridge in glass containers so that they see it, or what if, and we're all guilty. I come down as well in the middle of the day and I open the cupboard, and whatever I see first is what I'm going to grab, right? And kids are kind of much the same way. So make it so that the stuff you don't want them to see is at the back of the closet or higher up, or not on not out on the counter. And the stuff you do want them to eat should be more prominent, just so that it becomes the natural choice.
Right. So we had you for 30 minutes, and I want to make sure that we get, everything that you want to share about the book, because there's so much good content in this book, Sugar Proof. What would you say are some key points that you want the people to take away about this book?
Yeah, I think we covered a lot of that already. I think that we didn't really talk about some of the effects of sugars beyond the behavioral stuff. And some of these effects are what we call silent or asymptomatic, which is a word that we've become familiar with these days, unfortunately. But it's the same issue with chronic diseases, and we talk about the effects of sugars on diabetes risk, or heart disease risk, or fatty liver disease. And a lot of those effects are silent, long-term chronic diseases, but they're all seated in childhood, and they're all related to too much sugar. So you might not be aware of those long-term problems, but because they're asymptomatic and silent, but know that they're kind of slowly progressing. So just because your kid is healthy weight and very active doesn't mean to say that they won't benefit from cutting back on sugar. So what we say is that wherever you are on this spectrum of activity level, of diet, of weight, you're going to benefit, your kids are going to benefit a lot by cutting back on sugar. And that could be a small thing like, oh, my kid likes peanut butter, and this peanut butter jar has X gram, 5 grams of added sugars in it per tablespoon. It could be just replacing that brand with a new brand, or it could be just taking on juice and getting it out of your kid's diet and not purchasing it. Point I'm trying to make is that wherever you are on that spectrum, you'll benefit from trying to reduce sugar. And you don't have to go extreme, because we don't want this to backfire. And we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we want, that sugar and sweet treats is an enjoyable part of our day and of growing up. So we want kids to enjoy that.
Right. Part of a
But
lot of, well,
we've
hope.
lost sight of it because we're so overwhelmed by sugar and sweetness that every mealtime has become like a sweet treat. So let's try to make sweet treats a really special occasion.
Right.
Somebody's asking where I can get the book. The
Right.
book is available everywhere that books are sold, real bookstores or virtual bookstores, and you can buy it online through all the usual channels, including bookshop.org. I like them because they support local independent bookstores. And also, I know your foundation is global,
Mm-hmm.
and the book can ship for free anywhere in the world if you order it through the bookdepository.com. This is a really nice feature that not a lot of people know about. Ships for free anywhere. Also, you can buy the Kindle version or the audiobook as well. So it's widely available, and I hope you're able to get a copy. I wish I could hand it to you all in person, but I'm here at home as well today. Yeah.
As a But thank you so much. We will definitely keep spreading the word that the book is out. I see you have a UK edition. I know you have a Spanish edition in the works as well. So we can get this book out to the masses, to anyone that
Yeah.
sugar, you should read Sugar Proof.
Yeah, the paperback UK edition is the one that will ship anywhere in the world for free. And the publisher is working on a 2021 Spanish version as well.
Right. So thank you so much, Dr. Goran, for joining us today. We
Thank
were
you.
to have this chat with you, and we hope to talk to you very soon again.
Anytime, would love to. Thank you so much. Take care. Have a good weekend, everybody. Take care. Bye.